Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about using Git and GitHub here. We're going to do this under Linux, which is my operating system of choice. But if you looked at the previous videos for the pre-work and you've set up Windows in your Mac, it'll be pretty much the same. It'll be just opening up the terminal window, either CMD or the Git bash shell for Windows, or the terminal for Mac, or here in Linux. You can also open up the terminal and then go from there and then use that in the browser. So this is not going to be an entire tutorial on Git and GitHub. We're just going to cover what you need to know for now. We're going to cut a couple of corners. I'm also not going to go into all of the 100% details. I might explain a command in one way, which is technically not the whole story, but it'll be true for what we're doing right now, and it'll get us up to speed. So first off, Git is just a program, and it's a program that does versioning, and you can use it without GitHub or without any other websites anywhere, and that's one side of the coin. And GitHub is a platform that supports Git and a bunch of stuff around Git. And we're going to be using GitHub, and specifically GitHub Classroom, in order to do some of the class management. And I'll show you behind the scenes how that all works later in the program. And you'll make your own decision as to if it's appropriate to use or if it's not appropriate to use, or where Git is or where GitHub is, because every situation is different, but you'll be empowered to do this. So let's get started. So what I find to be easier, so the concept behind Git is, in Git, you've got a repository, and a repository is basically a directory or a folder with a bunch of files in it, and it can be, files with more directories and more files in it, but it represents a project. So it could be a single file for a program, or it could be 100 different files, or it could be 20 documents, just a bunch of files somewhere. And what we're going to do is we're going to start by creating a repository or a set of files on GitHub. You don't have to do this. You can do this all on your local machine and then connect it to GitHub. But I think it's easier if you do this using GitHub to start. So when you log in, and this is my Zemansky account, so it's my regular account, which has tons of stuff going on. I've been using it for years. You'll want to create a new repository. So if you see this screen, you'll see new over here. But if you've been poking around on GitHub, like maybe you were looking at, maybe actually to start with, you're looking at github.com. You're looking at the pre-work site, and that's how you got to this video. And so you don't know where to create a repo. You can just click on the side here, which is for your account, and you're just going to go to your repositories. And then from there, you'll see the button for new is over here. So let's create a new repository, and we're going to give it a name. Let's call this Teacher Cert Demo. And it'll say that it's okay. You can give it a description here if you want. Learning Git and GitHub for for teacher certification. Then you can make it public or private. If it's public, everyone in the world can see it. They can make a copy of it. They can't change it, but they can look at it, and they can they can try to say to you, like, oh, here's a change, do you want to make it? But they can all get it and see it. So open source projects, things like that, will all be public. Private, only you can see, or only your group can see. So I try to do things public when I can, but we're going to be doing some things private as well, but this can be public. Now for the next step, we're going to click on this. This is an important one. Click on the initialize this repository with a README. If you don't do this, it's okay, but if you don't do this, it adds another step to the creation process, and it can be a little intimidating if it's your first time here. What happens is it creates an empty repository, and then it gives you these cut and paste instructions to do on your machine to finish the job, and that can be a little intimidating. So it's just easier to start with a README. You could add a license if you want. We're not going to, but we are going to add a git ignore, and this just helps Git just be a little cleaner in what it tells you. So I'll show you a little bit about that at a later time. So we're going to use this for Java because that's the language we're going to use mostly here, and then we'll create the repository. So there we have it, and it's here. And we could actually work in this. We could actually click on this over here if we wanted to edit this file directly. This is the README file. Or we can click on the README file and edit it through here. Or we can go over to here, and there are any number of things we can do. We can create a new file here. So you can do a lot of stuff on GitHub, but normally what you're going to do is you're going to want to now make a copy of this repository on your machine. So the first thing we want to do is decide where to put this. And so you can put it in a lot of places. In my case, I have a folder called GH, and I usually put the things in here. These are my GitHub repositories that I'm working with right now if I want a local copy. So a lot of these are little projects that I've worked on, but some of them are projects that other people wrote that I also wanted to look at. Now instead, I'm going to put this in my desktop. So I'm going to CD into my desktop directory from my terminal, and you'll do something similar under Windows. You'll have to navigate your terminal to the desktop or under Mac. And then I come over to here and I click on clone. So I want to make a clone. Cloning is making a local copy of someone else's repo. I make sure it says clone with SSH. If you see here it says clone with HTTPS, click on the SSH. If you don't see that SSH option, it means you haven't set up your SSH keys, and then go watch that video and then come back. So now what we're going to do here is we are now going to type in this desktop folder git clone, and then I'm going to paste the repository. And what that does is it makes a new folder called teacher cert demo, which is our repository. And if we look over here, here it is. So that's that. So there's our little copy of it, and we could go into it. We can do stuff with it. We could rename this even and then under Linux we can type move teacher cert demo to just demo, and it just renames it. And it doesn't matter if we rename it; it's still connected to GitHub. That's not a problem. If you delete it, now if you delete this is just a shortcut under Linux. So to delete this, I'm just going to type the yes command through rm-r demo. That's one of the ways we can do this under Linux. You could also do this, if you wanted to, you could bring up the file browser and go to the desktop, right click on this and type delete. If you're not comfortable with the terminal right now, that's fine. So now it's gone. But another thing you can do is you can also, let's just copy this, it's probably still copied, but you can also say git clone, paste it, and then just give it a destination name. And you'll see that it creates this under the name demo. So now we have this under the name demo, and we go into it and we can see that that's the README file, just like it is over here, teacher cert demo, learning, so anyway, that's it. So now we have a copy on our local machine and a copy on GitHub. And if you had multiple machines, like a laptop, a desktop, if we were going into the office these days, we might have a copy of this. We might clone this to multiple places. So now let's see how we can work. So in here, let's say we want to create a new file. So I'm going to bring my editor up here, and this is Emacs. That's the editor I use, but you'll probably be using either maybe Notepad or Notepad++ we looked at, or maybe you're going to look at maybe you're using, actually I don't know what you'd be using on the Mac. gedit is another one under Linux, but we're going to create a new file. So I could use like this file open thing, but I use the keyboard for Emacs. So I'm going to go to my desktop, demo, and we'll call this new file 1. And this is a file, or an end file. Okay. I will save it. Could use the menu up here, but I'll just use the keystroke sequence. And now we see we have a new file. So now if I wanted to, this file exists, but it's not under Git. All right, it's just living in this file. And in fact, if I type git status, it says here, this is untracked. It's not keeping track of it. It's not going to keep track of the changes. And we want Git to keep track of the changes. We want it to, we want it to keep track of all of our changes and our history so we can recover later on. So what we're going to do is we're going to git add the file. So git is, all git commands start with the word git because you're running the git program. We want to add a new file, we give it the name. And now if we give git status, it says, hey, look, we have a change, it has to be committed. Now, if we want to undo that, we can do git reset new file 1, and now it's back to an untracked file. So if you're ever in a situation where you stage something, where you set it up to be, and then it says, oh, you haven't committed it yet, change it to be committed, you can always reset it back. And reset is a much more powerful command. It can do a lot more than that. So let's git add new file 1 again. And if we want to make this change, we want to say, hey, we really want to add it. We want to commit this add. We say git commit, then the name of the file, and this can be multiple files if we've changed multiple things. And then we give it a -m and then a message when we added new file. And notice what it says here. It's only going to say this the first time you use Git on a machine. It says, please tell me who you are. If you read the messages, they will usually tell you what to do. So it says run this command, git config -- global user email, and then it says, your email, so that's going to be zemansky@gmail.com. And then it says git config -- global username, and my name is Mike Zemansky. And what this does is, I'm going to go to my root directory, is it creates a file called git config, and it stores it in there. So once it's there forever. You can always go in this file and edit it if you want to have some other name. Most people just leave it alone. So let's go back to the desktop demo, and now we'll do that commit. We've made the commit. Now this commit is to our local repository. So notice, even if we refresh the page, this new file is here. If we want to send the file up to GitHub, we do git push. And now if I reload it, notice we have new file 1. All right, so that's how we put something up into GitHub. We can add a new file, and then we commit it, and then we push. Git push sends things up. Git pull pulls things down. And git pull, well, if I do git pull, it won't do anything now because it's up to date. But if somehow or other you get out of sequence, git pull will basically bring you up to date. All right, so now let's look at something else. Let's change this file. Or actually, let's look here. Let's look at git status, and it says everything is up to date. So let's go back to our editor, and let's add some stuff. Adding more lines, maybe we're going to get rid of that, and we'll insert here. And so now, and my editor is set, so it's showing me these little highlights here. I'm going to turn off the line numbers. It's showing me the, oh, I added these, I changed this, I deleted here, which is kind of a nice feature. So now, if I do, if I cat new file 1, it has those changes. But there are two things going on. It said, hey, this is modified. All right, so there's a change that's going on. Now, if I want to get rid of this change, I can do that. I can do a couple of things. One I can do is I can do, oh yeah, well, I can't reset yet. It's not staged yet. But what I can do is I can do a git checkout, which will bring me back. If I do git checkout new file 1, it will get rid of those changes. And if I reload, it automatically reloads, but notice it goes back, and then do git status, and it says we're fine. Now this over here, Emacs automatically creates a backup file with a tilde at the end, and that's just an automatic backup, and Git just shows us this. And this is where that git ignore comes in. If I go into that git ignore, and you don't have to do this, you can totally ignore this part, it says what files you should not pay attention to. So I'll say don't pay attention to any file, star, and then anything that ends in a tilde. So now if I do git status, well, I will do a git commit of git ignore, added backups to git ignore, and now if I do a git status, it says that we're up to date here. So now let's add those things again. Let's say added new stuff, and we deleted this, and we inserted here. We did something like that before. And now if we do our git status, this is modified. We can git commit new file. Well, let's not even commit yet. Let's do something else. Let's make a new file, new file 2. And now what we're going to do is, like, this is file 2. We're over here. We want to add it. Git add new file 2. Git status. And now notice, and we could even say, well, now this is ready to be committed, but we also want the changes for new file 1 to go in. So let's git commit new file 1. And we can say made some changes. And then git status. And we still have new file 2, so we can say git commit new file 2, add new file 2. All right, so now all of these changes have happened over here, but most of them are not on GitHub. Notice that if we look at git ignore, it doesn't have the change we made. If we look at new file 1, it doesn't have the change, and new file 2 doesn't even exist. But if we do our git push, now everything is here. All right, so let's make another change here. Let's go back into new file 1, and let's insert added more stuff here, and let's say we got rid of this. And so now if we do git status, we've modified this. Let's commit this one. And let's say we don't do the -m. If we don't do the -m, what we'll see here is it loads into an editor. And it just loads into whatever your system default editor is. So I can put my comment here saying I inserted more stuff. And I will try to, it says Control-CK to exit this. I normally just have my version of Emacs set up for this. But it'll, you know, on the setting up GitHub for Windows video, we saw how to set up Notepad++ for this. If you're using a Mac, I don't know what you're going to use. Chances are, if you've installed gedit, that's what it'll use under your version of Linux. But you just have to edit it and then exit the editor. So now, if we look at our status, let's do. Oh, so it's just this editor is not, I'm not saving the, oh, CK added the stuff, Control-XS, and then I have to exit it. It said don't kill this buffer, instead, I don't want to cancel. Oh, Control-C, Control-C is how it's set up for this. You won't have to use this, it'll be slightly different for you. So now if I do git status, let's see, I'll get pushing. And now it says we are up to date, nothing to commit. I don't know why the tabbing is the way it is. Let me just reset my terminal. Much better. Okay, so I just had to push to get rid of, to sync everything up there. So now, file 2 is there, file 1 has all the changes. So I just want to show you a couple other little things about using Git and GitHub. So one thing you can use there is I can look at git log to look at some of the history. So I can see that this is my initial commit on the bottom, and then I added new file, then and so I can see each stage here. But what I can even do is I can look at, this is the hash. This identifies this change, added new file 2. If I say git, now let me just look at git log again. And if I do git diff, well, actually, let's just do this on GitHub because it'll be easier for now. What we can actually look here is we can look at these commits. And we can see here, so if we want to look at this commit here, we can look and say, oh, look, we just added this file too. That's not really an exciting one. Let's look at this most recent commit, and it says, oh, look, in new file 1, I added these lines, and I got rid of this line over here. So you can actually go back in history, and let's go back to this one over here, and you can see, oh, this is what, you can basically see what's going on. You can see what was deleted, what wasn't deleted, or what was added. Really, really nice feature, and we're not going to cover this now, but you can also go back to previous versions. So another couple of commands that we can use is we can also remove new file to git rm removes the file, and let's say git move new file 1 to a new file. So we've removed a file and we've deleted a file, and I usually just do one thing at a time and then I do my commit. So let's do a commit, and we could do a commit by typing in each file name, but if I want to commit all of these, we can just do -A for all, and we'll say the message is deleted to and renamed 1. And now if we look at our git log, it shows that. And if we git push, we can spell git push, and we reload the page here, we have all the changes. All right, so those are all of the basics. Now, if I'm going to go, I think I've covered everything I wanted to cover here, but I'm going to go to the pre-work because I put some Git notes here as well. So clone, add, remove, move. You know, we've covered all of these. Now, we didn't really do pull, and I didn't put reset up here, which I'll probably add later. But pull pulls things down from GitHub. Clone makes that first copy, but pull updates you into that copy each time. So a couple of things to note in terms of the workflow, in terms of how you're going to do this. You're only going to clone once. But then when you're working, you're going to add and remove and move. You're only going to do those. You're only add when you're adding a new file to the repo. You're going to remove only when you're removing it. You're going to move only when you're renaming things. Your typical workflow is the first thing you're going to do, and I'll actually show you a little thing here. You can actually edit this on GitHub. So I want to edit this. I'm going to go into here, and I'm going to make a change. I'm going to make a couple of changes. Reset. And this is going to unstage a commit. Git reset in a file name. And that's one change we're going to put in. And then the other thing is in our workflow. Where are we? When you start, change into the repo directory and issue a git pull. All right, so now we're actually making a commit here. So I'm just going to say I updated README. That's fine. Commit the change. And we'll now see we have reset, we have the change. This was just like me doing an edit, a commit, and a push. But anyway, so my typical workflow is I'll change into the repo directory and do a git pull. And then as I work, I'm going to edit a file a little bit, do a commit, edit a file, do a commit, then do a push, edit some more, do a commit. You know, and then you might add a file, etc. And when you're done, just make sure you do a final push. And that's pretty much it. Now you might, when you're working, get a merge conflict. And so when you do a git pull, especially if you use more than one computer, you're just going to get this weird message saying, oh, I can't do the merge. You got to manually do it. We've got a conflict. Don't worry. It's very easy when it comes up. We will show this in class. If somebody has a problem with this during the pre-work, email me and we'll help resolve it. But you'll just have to edit your file and look for lines that look like this, that have this, you know, like these types of things in it, and just manually edit it to make it look the way it should look. Basically what they're saying is, oh, this is the stuff on GitHub, this is the stuff on your machine, we don't know which one you want, and so you just manually do that, and then you just are able to save and commit. And then the final thing I'll say to close out this video, because it's longer than I would have liked, is when all else fails, when things are going totally bonkers with GitHub and you can't figure it out, you can always just kind of start over. Nothing is ever, you know, like once it's in Git, you'll be able to get to it, you just might not know how. So what I'll do is if I'm totally lost and I can't get things to work, I'll just say screw it, I rename the folder of my repository, I clone a new copy so I have a totally new copy of it, then I just copy over anything from the old repository to the new one and I push them back up. All right? And that's pretty much it. So that's the basics of using Git. I hope this was clear enough. There are tons of Git resources on the web, so you can just do searches for them. Tons of videos and everything, and you'll be using it. And when you start going through the walkthrough, when you go to the next stage here, when it's accept GitHub Classroom link, and then when you start assignment number 1, and we can even look at this for a second here. Assignment number 1 has a walkthrough, a video walkthrough to step you through everything, and that's going to go over some of this Git stuff even more. All right, so that's it for now.